The Jubilee government in 2017 promised over 1.3 million jobs and county industries. But as we speak, the reverse is happening. The government has proven to be incapable of delivering in its third year of its second tenure. It is a government in record of dubbing the youths as thieves as it advances the interests of a few by practicing nepotism in ambassadorial jobs, among others, and granting old men who should be on their retirement jobs that the youth can confidently deliver and are skilled in.
Yeah, that was a press that was given by the youth. There was a protest march in Nairobi dubbed "I Lost My Job, KE." So this evening we're looking at the appointment of Mary Wambui to head the National Employment Authority. We're speaking to Jared Okello, who's the Nyando Member of Parliament, and Didmas Baraza as well, Kimnini Member of Parliament. Didmas, let me come to you now. So first of all, we're looking at the National Employment Authority, whose mission is to formulate and implement employment opportunities and programs for creation of sustainable employment for all Kenyans. And the vision is employment opportunities for all. I remember last week when we were having this conversation, the first question I asked Kenyans is if at all they're even aware that this authority exists. And a good number were not aware that it exists. The fact that Mary Wambui has now been appointed as its chair is the reason why a lot of people are actually talking about it. And that is why you come in very handy in this conversation. I know you had you had some suggestions on what Kenya can do to tackle unemployment in the country, because that is why essentially Kenyans are angry about these appointments. And you're talking about organizations having interns and paying them, and perhaps this is a way out for you from where you sit to cut down the number of unemployed youth in the country?
Yeah, I think just before I answer your question, Mary Wambui is only qualified to be the chair of maybe the cash transfer systems for our senior citizens, because the only thing that I can remember her for is there are two Margarian investigations, Artur Sargasian investigations, Linda, and you cannot really put a person of that age to be in charge of an employment authority that is going to design and formulate employment within the young people. Because ideally, that authority has existed with little knowledge about Kenyans' understanding about that authority, because the person who was at the helm of that authority was equally somebody who never knew why he was appointed in that position, Linda. And I came up with a bill that I will see every employer in this country employ 5% of their total workforce as paid up interns, being paid a minimum stipend of 25,000 shillings. And I'm happy that the Public Service Commission have already picked the first batch of interns, 15 from every constituencies across this country. And this is something that is going to assist unemployment in young people. The young people are hidden treasures of this country. The young people are the energy of this country. And the current unemployment rate is quite alarming. It's alarming, Linda, and we cannot bury our heads in the sand. We need a young person to be in charge of the youth, in charge of the employment authority, because a young person will be driven by the very many problems that bedevil these young people. He will do the work passionately. And I just want to bring you up to speed that the problems that this country is experiencing is because of lack of, civil servants, lack of people who really are driven by the desire to bring change in this country. And I know for a fact that there is no way that the CS for Labor, Kuria Tan, can appoint anybody as the chair or on the board without the approval of the head of state. The head of state must have gone through the document. And you really have to ask yourself one question. What drove whoever appointed Mary Wambui? She has never held any office in terms of the HR management office. She has never. The Act says that a person who should serve in that capacity must have at least 7 years of experience in HR management, which Mary Wambui doesn't have that position. We need a young man, a young person who is full of eager. Look around these parastatals. Those that are doing very well, they are in the hands of young people. And I think we really need to relook at our trajectory as a country, because we are really trajecting in the very wrong direction, and we should not really claim to have the interests of the young people of this country at heart, yet when it comes to appointing people, specifically to head arms of government, or rather state departments or boards that are very instrumental in ensuring that the young people get employment in this country. Because the reason as to why this authority is formed is to be able to reduce unemployment among the young people.
Okay. Jared Okello. A good number of Kenyans on social media are very upset with this appointment. And that did not end there, because they quoted other individuals who've been appointed who are way past their age, including Mudia Wori, a good number of them, Musikari Kombo, Masden Madoka. Are Kenyans angry at the wrong people? Is that the problem in Kenya? I know the appointments do not make sense to a couple of Kenyans because of the age, but speaking to David Ocean, he also said, I have no problem with having elderly people, because some of them come with some very good expertise that perhaps can even help the youth. But are Kenyans angry at the wrong thing? Because essentially we are talking about a national employment authority that very few people even know exists.
Well, thank you, Linda. Before we took the commercial break, you did interrupt my thought process.
I had to take the break.
I was laying a background. I was laying a background under certain extraneous circumstances when an octogenarian can ascend to such a position. And one thing that I would want to conclude with, that I'm yet to be furnished with these peculiar and unique competences that are endowed in Mary Wambui that many young Kenyans are not. So these are fundamental questions that we must raise at this point in time. I want to make it clear that the anger and the disappointment that is being exhibited by Kenyans out there is never misplaced. We have a big youth bulge in terms of unemployment, and your statistics, which you did show on the screen, is that for between out of 10 people who are unemployed, 9 fall within the category of 35 years and below. And the travesty of it is that those aged between 18 and 24 occupy about 70% of this number. So Kenyans are not misplaced, therefore, to raise their voices over very pertinent concerns on these particular appointments that the president has had. As a pattern, why Kenyans are having this as a problem is that it is now becoming a fashion that each time there is a vacancy that exists within government, you are almost certain that the replacement will be somebody 70 years and above. This is why the anger is coming from. But the biggest anger is drawn from the fact that the government is not laying the ground for jobs to be availed. If young people had jobs, if this government was working around the clock to expand the horizon of opportunities, even when people like Honorable Mary Wambui would get into these offices, no one will take keen notice. But because the government is actually doing zero to allow young people to have jobs, and when such opportunities do arise, they do not look for the young people who are actually jobless, but still resort to people who have actually, I would say with a lot of respect, outlived their usefulness in society. It then becomes angry. Kenyans then become very angry at such advances. So what this government ought to do I know that they expect Kenyans to entrepreneur themselves to prosperity without providing assistive structures for this to occur. They must work around the clock to create jobs to our young people. Otherwise, this is a time bomb. And the demonstration that we did see on the streets today and the press statement released by these young people is something that is simmering, that if we do not address it in good time, then I am afraid they are going to run everybody out of town. The government has failed young people. Most of them are actually underemployed. Underemployment means they are trained, but what they do are jobs that do not mirror their trainings and their skills.
Okay.
So if the government has, deviated from this most important consideration and expecting only the old folk to be considered for these jobs, then that in itself becomes a travesty, Linda.
Yeah, I hear you. And this is why, because you have Moody Award-Hills 91, Francis Mudhaura 71, Chris Obure 75, Musikari Kombo 74, David Musila 75, Masnen Madoka 75, Esther Murugi 66, Mary Wambui 69, and we have Joseph Kenya, who's head of public service at 68. Didmas Baraza, you get the final word in this conversation. How do we fix this? I know everyone who's been involved in this conversation this evening says we have no problem with the older folk taking up some positions in the society, in the state agencies, as long as they have that unique trait, unique expertise that other people do not have. And everyone agrees that perhaps there needs to be a mix as well. So what's your parting shot in under a minute?
My parting shot to young people of this country is that they should never be cheated by government, that they are trained to employ themselves. They should be able to force the system to employ them, to give them positions in government and the private sector. Then when they hit the age of 60, then they can retire to be consultants and form companies, because they will have now acquired enough resources as capital, enough experience to run those firms as directors. And that is it, Linda, and I'm happy to be here on this show with Jared, who is my very good student. I've been his teacher of English for a long year, for quite some time, Linda.
Okay. Jared, you get your final word. Your teacher has just spoken, so you have 30 seconds, Jared.
Well, I thank you, Linda. What the president should do, firstly, is to consider young people in places of employment. But even those who perhaps by charity and benevolence of the president have ended up getting appointments such as this, can do us one huge favor by respectfully declining to take these offers so that they can pass these batons to the young people.
Okay.
But if they are as hungry for employment as young people, then I think we have taken a different turn that may lead us into great jeopardy and oblivion as a nation.
I hear you. So this is where we wrap up the big story this evening. And as I wrap up, I'd like to remind President Uhuru Kenyatta of his speech, which I began with at the beginning of this show, when he was endorsed as the global champion for young people's agenda. I will pick bits of it, which is very important for the youth out there. He said, and I quote, "We do not champion the cause of youth opportunity and hope as a favor, but rather as the necessary, undeniable embrace of our collective future. We must give young people education and employment opportunities if our societies are to live up to their full promise." Mr. President, we hope you're listening. And that is the big story this evening. I'm Linda Ogutu.